Hello everyone. Welcome to the Yissilmissil Productions channel. My name is Steven Yissel, and today we are doing part 8 of our deep dive into the Bermuda Triangle. And we have been reading from the book of the same name, written by Charles Berlitz. So today we are starting chapter 7. Titled A Suggestion from the Ocean's Past. And there's a lot of photographs in this chapter here at the beginning. So I'll be showing all these. And before we start, I'd like to remind everyone to please like the video and subscribe and share around. I really appreciate it. It does help. And yeah, just thank you for watching here. I really do appreciate it. One other thing before we start, I do have Saturday's show covering the Chicago film industry, and we will continue reading this book on Saturday morning at 11. And again, for the third week in a row, we'll be doing a Sunday Let's Talk About It, where it'll be a channel update for here on YouTube and the other backup channels that I have. And that's more of a show to give you an update on what's going on around here. Y'all should tune in this Sunday. That'll also be at 11:05. And that's Central Time, so Chicago. And again, on Tuesday of next week, we'll be doing our next part in our deep dive for Coral Castle and Ed Lead Skolnich. So again, I'm thankful to have you all here. We'll see how much we get through today. We might go a little over an hour here. That's all good. All right. So before I start, I'm gonna get this usual photograph up here. Just give me one moment. I do have a few other Bermuda Triangle related photographs, but just right now, this'll do. Alright, that's nice. Okay. Hi, Zenray. One more time before we begin here with Chapter 7 in this book. Again, if you're following the other series on my channel, I do have a show coming up on Saturday and Sunday. Saturday is more focused on the Chicago film industry. Sunday is focused on my channel here and updates there too. So I encourage everyone to go check those out, and my Tuesday show with the Coral Castle deep dives. And I am working on 3 different new deep dives. So I haven't officially announced all of them yet, but I did work on one of the thumbnails. I'm going to try moving away from putting the parts in the thumbnail, if that makes any sense. Like, every thumbnail will be the same. And you'll be able to see what part all of these deep dives are just right at the beginning of the title in the video. It says part 8 here. And I do have playlists on this channel. If you go and click on the name, go to playlists, there's playlists for these deep dives. So you can go in and watch them chronologically at any time you choose. So that's just a heads up. Okay, so Chapter 7. A suggestion from the ocean's past. And hopefully this screen size will be okay. I really think it should be. I just gotta check one more thing here. Alright, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm thinking there's a setting on my camera here that's not shut off again. But, we're just going to carry on here. So, Chapter 7, a suggestion from the ocean's past. It is generally considered as proved that large sections of the Earth's surface were once underwater, while other areas now underwater were once land. This was noted by the naturalists of ancient times when they found fossilized life in the desert, as well as by modern naturalists who have found skeletons of whales in such inland areas as Minnesota and even in the Himalayan mountains. While ample evidence exists that the Sahara was once an inland sea. While there is general agreement on large-scale interchange of land and sea throughout the world, the question of timing is especially important for the consideration of the land and sea level changes within the Bermuda Triangle within comparatively recent geological times. We know that during the Ice Age, a tremendous volume of ocean water was frozen within the several miles deep glaciers that covered large parts of the northern hemisphere. About 12,000 years ago, when the glaciers began to melt because of climatic changes. Tricky word there. I'm so used to the propaganda of the current use of that word. I almost said the one for 2025 here. The causes of which are not yet clear. The world's waters rose, engulfing coastal lands and islands, turning isthmuses into straits. I know I said that wrong. I'm just going to spell out the word for you. ISTHMUSES. Into straits and large islands, into underwater plateaus. The old ocean water level of the Earth at the time that the third glaciation started to melt is estimated to have been 600 feet or more below the present level. In addition, many lands once above water may lie even deeper than this because of volcanic activity taking place at the time of or after the flooding, or, to use the biblical terminology which may have described these events, the flood. Almost all the world's races and tribes preserve vivid accounts of previous universal destruction by fire, flood, earthquake, explosion, or the shaking and shifting of the entire earth. And I'm under the impression there were several of these that happened. In most cases, only a single survivor, along with his family and selected animals, has traditionally been spared to start a new life, as did Noah in a new world, once the disturbances had ceased or the waters had abated. But Noah was just one survivor, the one familiar to the inheritors of Judeo-Christian religious tradition. There were numerous survivors of the same or similar catastrophes, including I want to say Deucalion or Deucalion. Deucalion of Greek myth. I haven't had to pronounce that word in a very long time, if at all. Who repopulated the earth by scattering stones. Baisba Spada, the flood survivor. And that's spelled Baisbasbata. Told of the Mahabharata of India. Utnapishtim of Babylonian legend, whose story closely resembles that of Noah. Yima, spelled Yima, of Iran. Cox, COX-COX of ancient Mexico, who escaped the flood in a giant cypress raft. Tezpi, Tezpi, of another, more developed Mexican race, who had a spacious vessel at his disposal on which he loaded grain and animals. Bohica, or Bolchica, Bochica, of Colombian Chibcha legend. This word is spelled Chibeha, who finally got rid of the floodwaters by opening a hole in the earth, as did the Greek Deucalion. Then there's Tamandere, spelled Tamandere, the Guarani Noah of southern South America, who floated on a huge tree to the top of a mountain where he survived, and many others throughout the world. In each case, the animals which were saved reflect the local fauna, with the general references to the animals taken on the ark by Noah, exotically supplemented in the American legend by specific mention of such animals as llamas, jaguars, tapirs, buffalo, coyotes, and vultures, saved by his ancient American counterparts. With so specific a world legend, even the time period of the flood varies only slightly, mostly from 40 to 60 days. It seems plausible to assume that a worldwide catastrophe did occur, leaving, as it did, so deep a trauma in the racial memory. And that it just cuts off. And that it was connected with the sea, consequent to the changes in terrain, climate, and water levels throughout the earth. Vestiges of this catastrophe or catastrophes are found not only in the memory of man, but are witnessed by evidences of vast risings, sinkings, and bucklings of land and the sea bottoms, such as the sandy beaches under thousands of feet of water around the Azores, and the coastline beaches thrust hundreds of feet upward along many coasts, especially in Greenland, Northern California, and Peru, where human artifacts are found near the bottom of ancient geological striations resulting from this upthrust. The Andes themselves, geologically fairly recent, seem to have been thrust or forced upward, perhaps carrying with them such cities as Tiahuanaco, while other coastal lands of South America dropped into the Nazca Deep in the ocean. The same catastrophe may have caused the melting of the glaciers, which thereupon flooded the plateaus of the Atlantic islands and large parts of the continental shelves, which were formerly above water. At the same time, climatic changes occurred throughout the world, evidently with startling rapidity. In Siberia, frozen bodies of mammoths are still being found, frozen so quickly that the meat proved to be edible first by dogs and later experimentally by Russian scientists. These mammoths, rhinoceroses, and other animals not generally associated with Siberia were apparently entrapped in floods of freezing mud, or mud that subsequently froze, and preserved so quickly that undigested foods of plants no longer native to Siberia have been found in their stomachs. Man, we got a whole bunch of pictures here. Like, we got 4 full pages, so that's like eight sides of paper, so that's 8 pages. But the whole thing just jumped mid-sentence in the middle. Alright, I'll read one more paragraph here, and then I'll start showing all of the photographs that are inserted in this chapter here. Parts of northern Siberia, Alaska, and Canada are so covered with bones of great animals that suddenly perished, again at a date estimated from 10,000 to 11,000 years ago, that some islands or high points where they went for refuge seem to be made entirely of their bones. Other survival points were completely different, and inimical species fled for shelter and died in great multitudes have been found across northern Europe, Central Asia, and China, as if the whole top of the world had experienced a rapid and unexplained climate change at the same time. However, in other hemispheres, as well, there are indications of the simultaneous decimation of species, from the huge elephant graveyard that exists in the Colombian Andes and even underwater, as in the case of an enormous sea elephant graveyard off the coast of Georgia. None of these animals have their natural habitats in the places where they met their deaths in such numbers in the sudden climatic change of 12,000 years ago. Okay, one more, because this is a good break point. One more paragraph, and then I'll show the photographs and sketches here. Former land areas of this period, now covered by the water, include parts of the Mediterranean, including land bridges from Africa to Gibraltar and from Sicily to Italy, a large part of the North Sea, the continental shelves off Ireland, France, the Spanish Peninsula, and Africa, the sunken plateaus around the Azores, the Canary and Madeira Islands, as well as Azores Gibraltar Ridge and the North Atlantic Ridge, and the continental shelves of North and South America, and especially the vast Bahama Banks, which, before they were submerged, covered an area of thousands of square miles. Okay, so now we're going to get rid of this image that's next to me here. We're going to make this full screen. And I'll also be reading the captions off of these photos as well. So the first one, it says Stone Frieze, or Frieze, from Maya ruins at Koba, Coba, showing stylized escape from a cataclysm marked by exploding volcanoes and, in the upper left corner, collapsing temple pyramids. Maya legends recount that the ancestors of the Mayas originally came from a great land in the, quote, Eastern Sea, end quote, which was overcome by a cataclysm and sank beneath the waves. Amerindian traditions refer to this land as Aztlan, Aztlan, or Atlan, Atlan, and other similar names reminiscent of the sound of, quote, Atlantis, end quote. And the photo's by J.M. Valentine. But it's a stone. It's a stone relief or carving. Yeah, of course, this focused right when I had it up here. But you can clearly see the volcano going off. Other things happening. Well, it looks like the water. There we go. So next we have a view of oceanic action on mountains near Ancon, Peru. This view, taken at an altitude of 6 miles, shows evidences of wave action on sides of mountain in lower right of the photograph. The finger-like projections still contain fossils of mollusks and other sea fauna. Along the coast of Peru in this area, geological cross-bedding indicates that the former sea bottom, layers of which contain extremely ancient cultural vestiges, has been forced up out of the ocean. Wow. This photograph looks bizarre, but this is what it was describing. And then right below that on the same page, indications of deep land submergence in the Mediterranean. The diver is on the summit of a submerged acropolis 100 feet below the surface of the Aegean Sea near the island of Milos. While parts of the Mediterranean and other coastlines have sunk gradually over the centuries, some sections have evidently been precipitated suddenly to considerable depths. From the place where this photograph was taken, roads lead downward to constructions at even greater depths. And this photograph is by Jim Thorne, and it's of a scuba diver. So I'm also showing you the text that goes along with it that I just read. Alright, the next is the Great Pyramid of Giza, Egypt, perhaps a surviving artifact of a previous world culture which existed at a time prior to dynastic Egypt. Measurements of different aspects of the Great Pyramid suggest that it served as a gigantic marker, an astronomical clock, and a mathematical and astronomical conservatory, preserving in stone the previously unsuspected knowledge held by, quote, pre-dawn, end quote, cultures. This photo's by Courtesy Trans World Airlines. And it's just a little pyramid here. Next photograph is, the caption says, Cyclopean walls of fortress of I'm gonna spell this word. It's a city, I guess, or a country. Yeah, it's a city. SACSHUAMAN. Holy wow. I'll say it one more time. SACSHUAMAN. Sacsayhuaman, Peru. Somewhat resemble the underwater constructions at Bimini. The walls at this location and other pre-Inca remains in Peru, seen here partially filled in by subsequent Inca work with smaller stones, are themselves an archaeological mystery since they are of extreme age, with the stones set so closely they seem fused. There is no explanation of how huge stones with odd exterior and interior angles could be transported, cut, measured, and set to exact, but also random specifications by prehistoric people of whom even the Incas have no records. The photo is also from courtesy Pan American World Airways. So we're talking about those big boulders in those walls there. Alright, next is the Black Pagoda at Konarak, India, a surviving example of the surprising architectural capabilities of ancient times, especially the transportation of the enormous piece of stone covering the top of the tower. Technological advances of extremely ancient cultures in India suggest the link, even with earlier cultures where science had progressed to awareness of heavier than air flight, rocketry, atomic structure, and the concept of the Earth and its place in the universe similar to that of today. Photo is courtesy Government of India Tourist Office. It's this right here. Looks like a machine. Next is a golden artifact from a pre-Columbian tomb, which, despite its estimated age, 1,800 years, is considered by many researchers to be a model of a prehistoric plane, complete with delta wings, engine housing, cockpit windshield, a flanged tail, and elevators. A copy of this controversial object is on display in the Permanent World of Man exhibit in Montreal. Similar golden objects resembling airplanes have been found in different locations in South America. Photograph is by Jack Ulrich, and this is, I would assume, a pretty common photograph now. But, the questionable ancient aliens had covered this one a lot. But here at least we know where it comes from. Well, we know and don't know. Pre-Columbian. Okay, so we have 5 more images to show. So next up is air view of Nazca Lines, Peru. These lines of unknown antiquity depict animals, birds, geometrical shapes, and, as considered by many, landing strips. Difficult to notice from the ground, they were not identified until the middle of the 20th century, and then only from aerial surveys. The black line cutting diagonally through the landing strip is the Pan American Highway. Astronauts of Skylab 2 were instructed to take pictures of the Nazca Lines with a view to determining whether they had some special significance when seen from space, but space photographing them has so far produced unsuccessful. Oh, why is that? Huh? Keep in mind this book was also written in 1976. Next up we have Maya stone carving from Palenque, Chiapas, Mexico, frequently cited by believers in prehistoric visits by ancient astronauts. As proof of such visits and their picturization by ancient Maya who observed them or were told about them, the Russian science writer Kazantsev, Kazantsev, considers the plaque to be the representation of a space vehicle complete with recognizable, though stylized, antenna, flight direction system, turbo compressor, control panel, tanks, combustion chamber, turbine, and exhaust. I had a feeling it was 7 o'clock. Alright. So this is it right here. There we go. Alright, next we have the Piri-Reis map found in Istanbul in 1929, part of a world map said to have been recopied from a Greek original in the Library of Ancient Alexandria. Among other features, the Piri-Reis map shows detailed features of Antarctica, evidently drawn several thousand years before Antarctica was, quote, discovered, end quote, as well as the true shape of Antarctica without the covering ice. Other features indicate an advanced knowledge of astronomy, trigonometry, and the ability to determine longitude, not known for our culture until the reign of George III of England. And the photos from the Library of Congress. Surprisingly. I'm holding it up sideways here so that get a larger image of this. Next we have the Benincasa map of 1482, spelled Bennicasa, which Columbus may have had with him on his first voyage. The top of the map points to the coasts of Spain and Portugal, and some of the Atlantic islands shown were known to European seamen, while others were legendary. Antilia, the island at the bottom right of the map, was reputed from Carthaginian times to be a large island in the western Atlantic. Photographs from Library of Congress. And it's a very crude sketch. So I don't even know. Like the camera doesn't even want to look at it. Alright, and last we have the Buachi map of 1737. So this is spelled Buache. Copied from ancient Greek maps showing Antarctica without the ice. If the ice did not presently cover Antarctica, the Ross and Weddell Seas would unite in a gigantic strait separating Antarctica into two land masses, a fact which was not established in modern times until the geophysical year of 1968. This map is another indication of surprising technological capabilities of some ancient cultures. The photograph is also from the Library of Congress. And look at that, it's an overhead. But I don't think this is accurate now. It's the measurements are probably all out of whack. So we'd have to go back and look at the ancient Greek maps just to be sure. It's a pain. Okay. So that's all of the photographs. So we'll continue reading. Just give me a moment here. Alright, continuing on. Former land areas of this period now covered by water include parts of the Mediterranean, including land bridges from Africa to Gibraltar and from Sicily to Italy. So we read this part already. Okay. There is abundant proof that these areas have been above the surface of the ocean within the last 10 or 12,000 years. A Russian expedition north of the Azores recently dredged rocks from 6,600 feet, which gave evidence of their having been formed at atmospheric pressure about 17,000 years ago, while a 19th century dredging operation while repairing a break in the transatlantic cable in the vicinity of the Azores, brought up pieces of taculite, a vitreous lava which forms above water at atmospheric pressure. The samples were estimated to be about 12,000 years old. While this incident has often been commented on, the reason for the breaking of the cable is of special interest as an example of movements in the ocean floor. A sudden rise in the bottom of about 4,000 feet a sudden rise in the bottom of about 4,000 feet was what had caused the cable to break. A project now, from 1973 to 1974, being carried out in the Azores by the University of Halifax for investigation of geothermal energy, has had indirect result of ascertaining that the first 800 meters of core drilled below sea level give indications of having been formed above sea level, with the implication that great areas around the present Azores Islands were once above water. Other fairly recent discoveries seem to support the time element of 12,000 years for the most recent submergence of large land areas in the Atlantic, which would also coincide with the estimated time for the third glaciation. In 1956, Doctors R. Malace and P. Colby of the National Museum of Stockholm offered the opinion that skeletons of freshwater diatoms, which Colby had brought up in a sample core from a depth of 12,000 feet near the Atlantic Ridge, had originally been deposited in a freshwater lake formerly on the surface of land now sunk to the bottom of the ocean. The age of these freshwater diatoms was estimated at 10,000 to 12,000 years. This figure is oddly coincidental with Plato's account of Atlantis in his Timaeus dialogue, in which he refers to a great continent having existed in the outer ocean, quote, 9,000 years ago, end quote, or about 11,400 years before the present time. While dates recorded from legends are suspect, and even more so when they are second or third hand, since Plato received his information indirectly from Solon, who in part or who on his part originally acquired it while on a trip to Sais in Egypt, SAIS. It is nevertheless remarkable that this time calculation comes up so frequently in other fields connected with these sunken lands. But there are still other indications that large parts of the western Atlantic were once above sea level. Beach sand, for example, is formed not at the bottom of the ocean, but by the force of the waves breaking at the edge of the sea. Yet sand beaches are found on deep underwater plateaus around the Azores. Rivers form canyons only on land, yet the Hudson River Canyon proceeds underwater for hundreds of miles out to sea. Other river canyons extend out in like manner from where European, African, and South American rivers enter the ocean. Mastodon and human bones have been found on the bottom of the North Sea, along with prehistoric tools indicating a certain degree of advancement and the probability of cultural development in the Pleistocene era, prior to 11,000 BC. But perhaps the most striking of all indications of the drowning of cultural remains of prehistoric peoples since the melting of the last glaciers are the underwater buildings, walls, causeways, and roads now being found with increasing frequency under the waters of the western coasts of Europe and South Africa and the southeastern coasts of North America. That could also mean Florida. The latter include underwater buildings, walls, and stone roads leading east from the coast of Yucatan and Honduras, roads which may connect with submerged cities still farther out at sea. Yep. There is even a 30-foot high, 100-mile-long example of sea, quote, wall, end quote, leading out into the ocean off Venezuela near the mouth of the Orinoco. This was thought at first to be a natural feature, but its straight lines and composition tend to belie this first appraisal. How y'all doing? You hanging in there? There are strong indications that a continental land mass existed in the Caribbean Sea, of which the islands and ridges of the Antilles may be the surviving mountain peaks. In 1969, a research expedition from Duke University studied the sea bottom of the Caribbean and conducted dredging operations at a number of places on the Aves Ridge, a ridge running along the eastern border of the oceanic Venezuelan basin between Venezuela and the Virgin Islands. On 50 occasions, granitic, and in parentheses it says acid and igneous, granitic rocks were brought to the surface. Ordinarily, these rocks are found only on continents. A distinguished oceanographer, Dr. Bruce Heezen, last name spelled Heezen, in commenting on this matter, has observed, quote, up to now, geologists generally believed that light granitic or acid igneous rocks are confined to the continents, in that the crust of the earth beneath the sea is composed of heavier, dark-colored basaltic rock. Thus, the occurrence of light-colored granitic rocks may support an old theory that a continent formerly existed in the region of the eastern Caribbean, and that these rocks may represent the core of a sighted lost continent. End quote. It is on the underwater Bahama Plateau, however, the area of the most concentrated incidents occurring within the Bermuda Triangle, that the most surprising discoveries of underwater remains have been made, and many of these at a depth of only a few fathoms. The submerged limestone formations of the Bahama Banks were largely above water about 12,000 years ago. This large land area contained bays and inland waterways which are now evident on depth maps as the deep parts of the ocean cutting in and around the Bahama Banks. This considerable land area formed at the time previous to the rising of the sea a large island or islands which, if we are to believe the underwater remains, supported a complex culture. From 1968 to the present time, underwater discoveries have been made, especially near Bimini, of what seems to have been massive stonework on the present sea bottom, huge blocks of stone placed together in what may be roads, platforms, harbor works, or fallen walls. They strangely resemble the pre-Inca stonework of Peru, the pillars of Stonehenge, or the Cyclopean walls of the Minoan Greece. The age of the stones is uncertain, although fossilized mangrove roots, which had grown over the stones, have given carbon-14 datings of about 12,000 years. And I got the verdicts out on that. So we have another sketch here. It's supposed to be a map of some sort. Okay. Estimated land masses formed by the present Bahama Islands, Cuba, and Florida prior to the ending of the last glaciation, when waters from the melting ice cap caused the oceans to rise. The present islands are shown within their former shapes. Florida, it will be noted, extended far west into the Gulf of Mexico. The dark area in the middle of the land mass formed by the present Andros, Exuma, Eleuthera, and New Providence Islands is the deep ocean canyon called the Tongue of the Ocean. The sea at that time formed great island bays in the Bahamas, including the present Exuma Sound and the Tongue of the Ocean. So the top left portion, I believe, is that tip of Florida. And the bottom right portion is Cuba. That's what I believe they're showing there. Okay. On page 125. We have 234. Got, I think one more overhead sketch left. Alright, continuing on. The most celebrated of the finds has been the Bimini Road or Wall, first discovered in 1968 by Dr. J. Manson Valentine with divers Jacques Mayol, Mayol, or Jax Mayol, Harold Climo, Climo, and Robert Angove, Angove. First seen from a boat on the surface of the water, when the sea was especially clear and without surface movement, it was, in the words of Dr. Valentine, quote, an extensive pavement of rectangular and polygonal flat stones of varying size and thickness, obviously shaped and accurately aligned to form a convincingly artifactual arrangement. These stones had evidently lain submerged over a long span of time, for the edges of the biggest ones had become rounded off, giving the blocks the domed appearance of giant loaves of bread or pillows. Some were absolutely rectangular, sometimes approaching perfect squares. One remembers that absolutely straight lines are never present in natural formations. The larger pieces, at least 10 to 15 feet in length, often ran the width of parallel-sided avenues, while the small ones formed mosaic-like pavements covering broader sections. The avenues of apparently fitted stones are straight-sided and parallel. The long one is a clear-cut double series interrupted by two expansions containing very large flat stones propped up at the corners by vertical members, like the ancient dolmens of Western Europe. And the southeast end of this great roadway terminates in a beautifully curved corner. The three short causeways of accurately aligned large stones are of uniform width and end in corner stones. Quote, from the air one can dimly make out under their blanketing of dark algae the huge individual stones that precisely border the margins of this geological or archaeological challenge. End quote. The first underwater discoveries in Bimini have come under considerable attack from geologists and archaeologists, some of whom have not visited the site, but recent findings that have gigantic construction makes a turn and appears at other places on the ocean bottom as if it once ran around Bimini and beyond, indicated the increasingly apparent size and ramifications of this enormous structure, the purpose of which we can as yet only guess. The discoverer has expressed his personal feelings. Quote, the suggestion that the stones represent the remnants of walls, roads, or even an ancient seaport are unacceptable at the present time because it has not yet been established what, if anything, besides bedrock lies below. However, recent observations in slightly deeper water have verified multi-layered construction in at least one area. My personal feeling is that this entire complex represents the intelligent utilization by ancient man of materials provided by nature and appropriate for the creation of some sort of ceremonial center. In this connection, it should be remembered that certain ancient sacred sites, such as the Glastonbury Circle, 30 miles in circumference, that's 30 miles in circumference, and the designs of the Nazca Desert of Peru of lines and images of mile-long animals, traceable only from the air because of their gigantic proportions, have virtually no point of reference with our modern technology, as the purposes of these majestic artifacts are incomprehensible to us. End quote. Alright, everyone. I think we're going to end it there on that quote. And we'll continue this chapter next week so that we can stay within an hour here. I do want to read further, but got to stay within the time limit. Right? Otherwise, this is going to go another 40 minutes. So I'm just going to mark it here. So we'll continue this chapter next Thursday. So chapter 7, part 2, on page 127. All right. So, thank you again, everyone. Remember, Thursday will be our continuation next week with this deep dive. Saturday, we have the Chicago film industry deep dive. Sunday, we have Let's Talk. And Tuesday, we have the deep dive into Coral Castle. So until Saturday, I hope you all take care. And until the next one, class dismissed.